Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another session of the Australian down at the southernmost tip of the continent. You'll notice that if you were here last time that the background is different. I have been temporarily lodged in this rather vast beach house. You can see a little bit of the outside there. The doors are open. It's toward the end of June and I'm in a t-shirt. That's winter here. This is very unusual, but this place is built to harness light, which I can't control, so the blinds are down. It's also very cavernous, which makes it difficult to control the sound. So what this does is actually, well, given this is actually take 297 now, it makes me aware of how clever and how talented these people who present documentaries are. They talk to the camera, it's fluid, natural, they don't make mistakes. They know their material, their enthusiasm comes through. It integrates with the visual imagery really beautifully. And at the end of it, you come out knowing something. Well, I'm not sure that's what's going to happen here, but it certainly doesn't have the technical expertise that I was just referring to. So that's the preamble. The subject for the talk today, which is extempore, meaning I make it up as I go along, so forgive me for that, is to do with following on from the last session where I was introducing this idea of the monkey trap, being the means to catch monkeys. They put their hand in the trap, they form a fist around the food, they can't withdraw their fist, and so the monkey catcher ends up with a few monkeys to sell to the zoo. And we use that as a metaphor really for human desire, which is how we are bound to all objects that we want. This house is an expression of a whole lot of desires. I want a really big house which is about 20 foot high, maybe more. I want a dinner table that'll seat 14 people, maybe more. It's all desire. It's not good or bad, there's no judgment, but desire actually makes the world go round, really. But we do find ourselves caught by desire. So I want a certain outcome, I want things to be a particular way, or I don't want them to be a particular way, so we then have a case of aversion. And the last thought that we were left with in the last talk, for those that were there, and for those that weren't there, you may sort of wonder where this is going. The notion is that we are all holding on to these ideas of whatever form, and some of them are useful and some of them are not, but it's very difficult to know what they are because often we're unaware of them. A lot of these ideas and beliefs are very deeply hidden, and it's through some sort of external event sometimes that we can actually see it, or through practicing what Socrates would call self-examination, that we might observe what these driving factors, these motivators are. I suppose my point of reference is philosophy. As a young boy, I used to question as to who I am, why am I here, what is it I seek? And that last question used to be quite difficult to come up with a definitive answer. So I'd lie in bed and sort of think, well, maybe I want wealth. And, maybe not, maybe. Might be nice, but house, car, family. And we're talking about quite a young boy asking these questions. And the word wisdom came to mind. And what was interesting about that was that I didn't know what the word meant. But I was satisfied with the answer. So in a way, the first step toward achieving wisdom was to gain some sense of what it's about and what it is, if indeed that's possible. And then many years ago, but quite a few since that time of reflection, I came across philosophy, and I've been practicing it and studying it ever since. And philosophy means love of wisdom. That's what the word means. So I've now spent the bulk of the life looking for some wisdom and hopefully the wherewithal to actually put it into practice and be in some way useful. So that's sort of the reference point. The story that I will begin with is quite an old one. It's happened 47 years ago. I was swimming with a girlfriend up north on a very dynamic beach. The surf was quite rough. She was in the shallows. I was out the back, body surfing. She got caught in a rip, which is an undertow, and was brought out to where I was. And then it was obvious we needed to get back. She started floundering, couldn't get back. I had to make a choice, stay or go. I stayed. I tried to use the side stroke rescue technique, but Mr. Stupid didn't know that you don't swim against a rip, you swim across it. So I was exhausting my strength trying to get the two of us back. The shore was tantalisingly close, as was the bottom, but we couldn't touch either. And the beach was deserted when we got there. Anyway, so we're bobbing around there for a bit and it's looking a bit serious. Two characters walk across the beach. I wave, go, help. They wave and say, how are you? And you go, no, help. And they go, great day, what's it like out there? And it suddenly became obvious, because the knowledge arose, and knowledge has a way of doing that, that I needed to call for help and mean it. And that's a really interesting decision to have to make, to actually mean help. And I can still remember the sound of the voice, the qualities that were present, so that it was utterly fearless, there was no fear involved. It was powerful and it was pregnant with meaning. So this word, help, went out. These guys stripped off, swam out. All of a sudden there were four of us bobbing around. And they suddenly realised how dangerous it was and sort of said, we've got to go back. And they turned around and left. So my girlfriend and I are still bobbing around and starting to become a little bit less capable of staying at the surface in bob mode. We were starting to be in sink mode. And I really didn't know what was going to happen then. There was still no fear, but I suddenly heard this whistling and turned around. There's a bloke on a surfboard, standing on a surfboard, coming in on a wave, and he said, get on. So I got my girlfriend onto the board. I put my arm over the nose of the board, and at that moment, the fear got in. At that moment, because I suddenly realised that what I was afraid of was losing all the things I thought were mine, my attachments, my relationship, my girlfriend, my family, my friends, my imagined future, whatever objects I might have had, whatever activities I may have enjoyed, all of that suddenly appeared as being the very thing that I was attached, or the things that I was attached to, and that I really didn't want to lose, which was quite a shock. So it wasn't about fear of death, it was fear of losing these things which I think are mine, including this body, this wit, intelligence, these feelings, this insight. So it was quite startling. Anyway, he dropped us off on the beach and went out and never saw him again. I don't know where he came from, don't know where he went. It was just quite bizarre. The whole thing was bizarre. In fact, it was quite miraculous. Anyway, the reason I'm telling you that story is, and it's to do with this, also to do with the matter of philosophy. The reason I'm telling you that story is that there were two lessons that predominantly came out of that. One was, when you ask for help, mean it. That was one. If you're going to ask for it, mean it. Two, don't presume to know where the help is going to come from. Because I thought it was going to come from there, but it came from there. And from a source that I didn't even know existed. So the purity of the call for help is really quite significant. So what's this to do with where we're going? Well, as part of my philosophical endeavour, I'm in a group, I run groups, and we had a group the other night of people that have just coming to the subject for the first time, and they've been given exercises to practice, and this young lady was practicing this exercise, and she found herself in a very difficult scenario at work where she couldn't solve the problem. So she actually considered what a wise person might do should they be in that situation. And the effect was it gave her space between the situation and herself, and she was able to reflect on what was needed. And she suddenly realised, and this is no great shakes for many of us probably, but she realised that she needed to ask for help. Now, she never does that because she lives under the dominion of a very powerful idea, and the idea is I have to do this by myself, I have to be self-dependent, I have to be self-reliant, I have to be seen as capable, and I can't be seen to rely on the goodwill or the skill of others. So anyway, that was her observation, that she found herself needing to ask for help. The question was put, did you? She said, yes. I said, who did you ask? She said, I asked the supervisor. The supervisor was always saying, I'm here to help, but I never asked her to help. And so I did, and she was really happy. And I said, and what effect did asking for help have on you? And she said, I felt liberated, a sense of peace and liberation. And that's really something. So the monkey's nuts in this particular example is an idea, and the idea is I have to do it myself. So, by way of reference, it's very interesting. The Buddha says the ocean has only one taste, the taste of salt. Truth has only one taste, liberation. So if you take her example, and she definitely had an experience of liberation, it could be argued that she had a sense of what it is to experience truth, because she came out of what is untrue, which is an idea which was binding her, limiting her, restricting her. Her potential was completely bound, and so the idea was, I can't do this. So it was a very significant step. So then the question is well, how is it possible to actually identify some of these beliefs or ideas which aren't so useful, that we do find ourselves identifying with and being bound by? And there is a simple awareness exercise that we use, and it is a very ancient practice. Those of you that have done various forms of mindfulness and yoga practices and meditation will probably recognise it. But for the purposes of this exercise, I'll just demonstrate and invite you to join in. It's really a practical exercise. When I spoke about philosophy earlier, it's practical. The words of the wise need to be applied in practice, and if they reveal some knowledge or insight, then it can be validated. If it's just theory, that's all it is, theory. So the exercise is very simple. We sit balanced and upright. Close the eyes. Feel the feet touching the floor. Feel the weight of the body on the chair. Feel the clothing on the skin. Feel the play of air on the face and the hands. Be aware of smell. Be aware of taste. Be fully here, now. And let the listening run right out to the most distant sound, most subtle sound, hearing all sound, embracing all sound. Simply rest in this awareness. Good. So that's the awareness exercise. If you're in a group that we were involved in conversation, and were involved in conversation about the practice, you would be asked, what did you experience? What did you observe? Some people experience a busyness. Some people observe what's going on in the mind and it's darting all over the place. Some people experience deep peace and relaxation and contentment. There's no right or wrong, it just shows you what's going on at the time. So the idea is that we practice that exercise for about 2-3 minutes twice a day. That's the practice. But we also nourish that with some words of the wise. So I'll leave you with the thought from the Buddha. The ocean has only one taste, the taste of salt. Truth has only one taste, the taste of liberation. So treat this awareness exercise as an exercise in liberation and freedom from them thar nuts. Thank you for taking the time to listen. I wish you well. And it may be that you are able to feed some questions back onto this medium if you have any observations or questions, and perhaps they could be passed on here, and that might indeed help us determine the direction for any further conversations should they be desired. Farewell.